Sadism, as I understand it, is not merely the crude enjoyment of inflicting physical pain upon another being. Its psychological essence lies much deeper. The desire for absolute control, the urge to reduce another person to an object, to strip them of their independence, and to bend them entirely to one's will. The sadistic impulse may manifest in cruelty, in humiliation, or even in subtle manipulation, but its underlying drive is always the same: to abolish the other's autonomy and thereby affirm one's own supremacy. In every sadistic relation, there exists a polarity of power: the one who commands and the one who obeys, the one who acts and the one who is acted upon. For the sadist, the greatest triumph is not simply in causing pain, but in witnessing the victim's helplessness, in seeing the trembling acknowledgement that the victim's fate rests entirely in the sadist's hands. Pain is only a tool. The true aim is possession of the other's will. It is for this reason that sadism has often been misunderstood when reduced to the sexual domain alone. While sexual sadism is perhaps its most dramatic expression, the phenomenon itself extends into all areas of human life, in the relationship of parent to child, of teacher to pupil, of ruler to subject. Wherever power exists without limits, there arises the temptation to exercise it sadistically, to transform authority into domination and responsibility into tyranny. At the heart of sadism lies the lust for power. This lust is not satisfied by equality or by the recognition of the other as an autonomous person. Equality threatens the sadist, for it implies limitation of his control. To admit the other as equal is to renounce domination, to accept boundaries. But for the sadistic character, boundaries are intolerable. His sense of security and identity depends upon transcending them, upon dissolving the other's will into his own. He must reign without opposition, for only then does he feel real and strong. One must not think, however, that the sadist is free in his exercise of power. In truth, he is as dependent upon the victim as the victim is upon him. The sadist needs an object to control, for without subjugation he is powerless. His sense of strength is parasitic. It feeds upon the weakness of others. In this way, the sadist is never truly autonomous. He can dominate, but he cannot be without the dominated. His power is thus an illusion, a compensation for his own inner impotence and insecurity. The psychological roots of sadism are found in this insecurity. The sadist fears isolation, insignificance, and helplessness. To conquer these fears, he attempts to dissolve them through the domination of others. If he can enslave another person, if he can make another's life or death depend upon his will, he feels that he has transcended his own weakness. In the mirror of the victim's submission, he sees his own imagined omnipotence. This explains why the lust for power is insatiable. The sadist can never be satisfied with partial control, just as he can never be content with temporary victories. Each act of domination reveals at the very same moment the fragility of his position. He must dominate again, more thoroughly, more absolutely, lest the illusion of omnipotence collapse. Thus, sadism becomes compulsive. The more the sadist attempts to secure his power, the more he is driven to extend it, to find new victims, to create new situations in which his control is displayed. His entire life may be consumed by this chase for mastery. We see this clearly in the political tyrant. The tyrant may begin by seeking security, but once he has attained authority, he cannot stop. He must silence every opposition, destroy every rival, and extend his rule beyond every border. The more he controls, the more he fears the possibility of losing control. The lust for power becomes a trap of his own making. The tyrant is enslaved by the very domination through which he sought to liberate himself. But sadism is not confined to the stage of history. In everyday life, it appears in quieter forms: the parent who humiliates a child, the supervisor who torments an employee, the lover who manipulates a partner's emotions. In each case, the dynamic is the same. The self's insecurity seeks relief in mastery over another. The sadist may cloak his domination in the language of love, duty, or discipline, but beneath the mask lies the same craving, the urge to own and to command. It is important to note that sadism is not a perversion belonging only to a few pathological individuals. It is a potential within the human character, ready to unfold wherever fear and insecurity are combined with opportunities for domination. Social structures can encourage or restrain it. Cultural values can disguise or reveal it, but the root remains. The lust for power, born of weakness, driven by fear and expressed in domination over others. If we are to understand sadism, we must not be deceived by its surface manifestations. The blows, the commands, the humiliations. These are only symptoms. The true essence lies in the desire for absolute control, in the effort to transform another human being into a powerless object. Sadism is thus a desperate attempt to overcome one's own impotence through the destruction of the other's freedom. And in this attempt, the sadist reveals both his seeming strength and his actual weakness. For while he may enslave the other, he remains forever chained to the compulsion of his own unquenchable lust for power. If sadism's essence lies in the attempt to master and control another, then its roots must be sought in the inner condition of the sadist himself. The lust for power does not grow out of abundance, but from deficiency. It is not strength that seeks domination, but weakness that cannot bear its own limitations. The sadist fears isolation, insignificance, and the uncertainty of existence. In response, he builds a substitute for inner strength. He turns another human being into a possession, a living object whose submission provides the illusion of omnipotence. This dynamic explains why the lust for power is compulsive. Each act of domination alleviates insecurity for a moment, but soon the fear returns. The sadist, therefore, must repeat the act endlessly. He must command again, humiliate again, enslave again. Power becomes an addiction, and like all addictions, it never produces lasting satisfaction. The more he seeks it, the more dependent he becomes upon it. The apparent master is, in truth, the most bound of all, bound to his victims, bound to his compulsions, bound to the unquenchable hunger of his own fear. This cycle of sadism can be seen in countless forms. The tyrant who conquers nations is never content. He must extend his borders, silence every voice, crush every rival. The supervisor who abuses subordinates at work is never at peace. Each day requires a fresh assertion of authority, a new demonstration of superiority. Even in intimate relationships, the sadist cannot rest. The lover who manipulates or humiliates must repeat the ritual endlessly, for without continual proof of domination, he feels his very identity collapse. At the core of sadism lies a paradox. It is the attempt to escape powerlessness through domination, but the very act of domination reveals and intensifies the underlying weakness. The sadist must control, for without control he is nothing. Yet this dependence upon control exposes his lack of true autonomy. He cannot stand alone. He must enslave others to feel secure. His power is thus revealed as hollow, a reflection of his own incapacity to live without the subjugation of others. This paradox is most destructive when embedded in social and political structures. When entire institutions are organized around domination, sadism ceases to be an individual pathology and becomes a collective reality. History is filled with examples: dictators who elevated cruelty into policy, regimes that demanded absolute obedience, systems that thrived on humiliation and fear. In such cases, sadism is no longer hidden in private relations. It becomes the guiding principle of the state. Yet sadism also thrives in the everyday. It is seen in the parent who demands blind obedience rather than respect, in the teacher who shames rather than guides, in the partner who manipulates rather than loves. These everyday forms may appear small compared to tyranny, but they reveal the same structure: the desire to turn another into an object of control, the refusal to recognize the other's autonomy, the attempt to overcome insecurity by abolishing freedom. It is essential to distinguish sadism from healthy forms of leadership or authority. Genuine authority rests on competence, respect, and mutual recognition. It seeks not to enslave but to guide, not to humiliate but to strengthen. Sadism, by contrast, destroys the other in order to sustain the self. It cannot build, only dominate. It cannot respect, only subjugate. The sadistic drive also reveals something about the human struggle for freedom. Every person faces the tension between independence and security. Freedom is burdened with anxiety, for to be free is to accept responsibility, uncertainty, and the limits of one's own existence. For some, this burden becomes unbearable. They resolve the tension not by embracing freedom, but by attempting to annihilate it in others. In doing so, they gain the illusion of security, yet at the price of their own humanity. Fromm reminds us that sadism is not confined to a few pathological individuals. It is a latent potential in all human beings, arising whenever insecurity and fear meet the opportunity for domination. It flourishes where social conditions reward control and punish weakness, where cultural values equate power with worth, where institutions permit domination without accountability. The danger, therefore, is not merely personal but collective. Entire societies may slip into the sadistic pattern if the lust for power is left unchecked. Ultimately, the study of sadism confronts us with a difficult truth. The lust for power is a mask for impotence. What appears as strength is, at its root, weakness. What appears as mastery is, in reality, dependence. The sadist imagines himself a god, yet he is bound more tightly than any slave, chained to the compulsion of domination, never able to rest, never able to love, never able to be free. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to like and subscribe.